So with our next session here, which is Innovation to Accelerate Growth, we've got an excellent session which will be facilitated by Tom White, who's the Chief Revenue Officer for Network for Global Innovation. He's actually hosting from California, so he'll be up on the screen very shortly. Tom specialises in enabling companies to bring new to market or new to world products to market successfully. He's an award-winning marketing strategist, designer, filmmaker. He's helped achieve record sales and investment levels, improved sales margins and facilitated growth by launching first for corporate, public, not-for-profit and entrepreneurial ventures. He's recognised for his role in generating more than $1 trillion revenue pipeline for Fortune 500 innovators, including Lockheed Martin, Unilever, Motorola, Philips, Volvo and others. And he created the Master the Pitch program at the Los Angeles Cleantech Incubator to share this technique with entrepreneurs. Tom teaches business and economics and principles of marketing at the Arts Center College of Design in Pasadena in California. So please, let's give a big National Cleantech Conference welcome to our facilitator who's in California, Mr. Tom White.
All right, terrific to be here, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Let me introduce our panelists because we have a really wonderful session. So as an overview, as you may have seen by the program, the innovation landscape has revealed how new opportunities such as Cleantech can deliver economic benefits to regions whose innovation infrastructure has been underserved for far too long. Today, we have an opportunity to look at the framework elements required to build an innovation economy from 3 different perspectives from 3 different global Cleantech champions. And here's who they are. Kevin Klowden is the Executive Director of the Center for Regional Economics at the Milken Institute, a legendary economic think tank in Santa Monica, California. Kevin's focus is on the way economic development, job creation, and human capital issues affect regional economies both in the United States and globally. His main focus is how California interacts and competes in the world economy, including investments in infrastructure and international trade. Kevin also oversees the Institute's annual California Summit and key portions of Milken's annual Global Conference. Fred Walti, our boss at NGIN, is a serial entrepreneur. He began his career as a professional motorcycle racer with far more trophies than broken bones, but there were a lot of broken bones. Am I correct, Mr. Walti? After the trophies and broken bones, he became the New York advertising executive in charge of the Apple account. He became the CEO of GeoCities, one of the earliest unicorns and one of the first social networks. After that, Fred founded 11 companies. As he's fond of saying, most made no money, some made some money, and one made a lot of money. He founded the Los Angeles Cleantech Incubator, LACI, and helped more than 100 startups attract $250,000 in funding. Today, Fred's the founder of the Network for Global Innovation, a nonprofit organization with 40 members in 25 countries dedicated to assisting sustainable technology entrepreneurs no matter where in the world they reside. And Jon Raven is the Deputy Mayor of the Logan City Council and the Chair of City Planning, Economic Development, and the Environment Committee. But prior to being elected in 2016, the Deputy Mayor was a business owner. For what? The removal and demolition of hazardous waste. So he recognizes the power of small business, especially Cleantech business, as the backbone of Logan's economy. As Jon says, it creates wealth while creating employment for residents. And there are 10,000 people moving to the city of Logan every year. So it's one of the youngest and most diverse cities in Queensland. The average age in Logan is 34, representing 217 cultures. Jon's vision is to harness the energy and culture that is unique to the community and create a city of opportunity that residents are proud to call home. So that's our panel. And with that, I'll begin some questions. We'll have overviews from each one of our panelists. Then I'll be able to ask our panelists a few questions. Then we'd like to open it up for Q&A to the audience. So Kevin, at the Milken Institute, you focus on economic development, job creation, and human capital issues, and how they affect regional economies, both in the US and globally. Your colleague, Matt Horton, along with Fred Walti, wrote an article in Cal Matters called California Needs a Redistribution of Innovation. It describes how California's successful record in incubating technology spans from clean tech to biotech, electronics to entertainment, and from sea to ground and air to space. So California businesses have an incredible potential for scale. But this article describes how to provide innovation to those who don't have access. From your perspective, can you tell us how that works?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for asking and very much for having me here. The most important thing you need to understand with creating an innovation center and what we call a cluster of innovation, and clusters are incredibly important, is that you need different factors in. You need to have the people first and foremost, the people who are interested, the people with ideas, the ability and the pipeline for those people to be able to get the education and the opportunity to access and build, as well as work in these fields. You need the place, you need a physical location that's set aside for this innovation to take place, whether it is obviously something obvious like the LA Cleantech Incubator, or an incubator hosting facility in a town or a city or some place that allows people to innovate and to thrive. You need capital, and that means that you need funding. You need a source to allow the companies to not only start up but to grow, and you need the ideas. And that very much means very often not just the entrepreneurs, but really the partnerships with universities, partnerships with private companies, partnerships that allow those ideas to be placed in a community, to be nourished and to thrive. And all of those is incredibly important. When we talk about with California, is that historically we all know about Silicon Valley, but it's not just Silicon Valley. It's about places such in Los Angeles and Silicon Beach. It's about the ecosystem that grew up around San Diego, University of California, San Diego there, or UC Irvine, or even UC Davis, inland in California, and about being able to spread those centers of innovation to places that are lower cost, that have people who are very much eager and able, who cannot access it otherwise. And being able to actually grow and develop those centers of innovation is incredibly important. Being able to not only have people go through the colleges and university systems, not just as undergraduates, but as graduates, to know that they want to be able to stick around in a community, to be drawn in there. It's worth remembering that you don't need a university town unto itself. You just need to be part of that cluster. And you need, when you're establishing and creating a cluster like that, an ecosystem like that, it is important to be able to draw these various aspects together, to be able to draw the people in and keep them, to educate them up, to create opportunities for people who are coming where there hadn't been opportunities. It's important for you to be able to have the funders want to come to your community, either to have them already there and to keep the money there, or to give them a reason to travel there and to be there. For the ideas, to know that if somebody is coming up, a professor or a university or an entrepreneur, to know that they want to stay there because their ideas will be able to attract people and money, and to know that there's a place for them to be there. And it's not unique to California. We've seen it in Boston. We've seen it in Austin, Texas. We've seen it in the state of Utah in the United States. And even overseas, you can see places, whether it is Shenzhen in China or Singapore, where those ideas and those places that a critical mass has been created for things to happen. It's important to know that it takes time and it takes some patience, but when you get the buy-in and when you get the opportunity to do that it doesn't have to be these classic traditional centers, and that it's very important for policymakers to work together with the universities, with private companies, with companies who may not even be in the area in terms of their headquarters, but have a vested interest in doing so. And we've been seeing aspects of this in other parts of California where this is starting to build. And the key thing is that universities who didn't originally care about this idea of these innovative clusters, they thought, hey, we're only concerned about just graduating people. We're only concerned about our looking inward and maintaining our own identities. Now look outwards and realize that they too can be these great centers of innovation, whether it is in a place like Bakersfield, California, whether it's in a classic example of Raleigh, North Carolina. Any of these, it's looking at those examples and being able to attract money in, keep the people there, and ultimately create a center, because there's no question, especially with clean technology, that this is where the future is, and that there aren't many places that really own this, and there aren't really many places that are established yet. And being able to look at the comparative advantage for a cluster and a location and say, we can do this and we just need to work together to make that happen, that's incredibly important. And there are places that have been doing it, there are places in the process, and there are obviously places that in the future will be able to.
Well, fantastic. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. I'll come back to you with some questions on that. Fred Walti, you and Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa built an innovation economy in Los Angeles when you founded LACI. But until then, LA, Los Angeles was known as a city for film production, the music business, oil and gas production, aerospace, agriculture, international trade, smog. It had some of the worst air pollution in America. But it wasn't known for entrepreneurial innovation, and it certainly wasn't known for clean tech. So it had no funding base for that. But you raised $60 million to stand up LACI, and you created the largest green economy in America. At NGIN, you innovated the 7 pillars of innovation as a model to export the kind of success that you built with LACI in Los Angeles, to export that to other cities around the world that want to create innovation economies. Can you describe generally those 7 elements and why this model is so important to the creation of an innovation economy for any city in the world?
Well, thank you, Tom. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. Well, we didn't start out knowing 7 elements. We kind of learned them the trial and error method in trying to build a innovation economy throughout Los Angeles, an innovation hub. And one of the things we really learned, and by the way, as Tom has mentioned, we were the co-founder of the Los Angeles Cleantech Incubator. And one of the first things we learned was building the incubator was maybe the least important. It's what you connect to that incubator. Why? Because entrepreneurs, and I know something about that, they need connections to money and customers and help. They need coaching so they don't make the kinds of mistakes that I made all the time, so that we get from A to B a little bit sooner. And C, they need some flexible space. Perhaps less space today than it was 10 years ago, but they needed the ability to grow. And as our previous session said, we build product, we bend metal, so it's a different kind of space. So those 7 things that are required to help include the following. Yes, we have to start, and which John will talk about in a minute, with an innovation engine, with an incubator, an accelerator, programs to help entrepreneurs. Then you have to build bridges and connectivity to the kinds of companies you saw in the previous session, capital, money. You need to then also create bridges and connections to markets, not just local markets. I can talk a little bit about global markets, but really, when I call local, I mean to harnessing the purchasing power of the city to drive innovation and economic development. Then we talked about a pillar called sources of innovation. And most often those sources of innovation, of course, are garages, but they're also the research labs and company labs that are created. But having science and technology taking place in those labs does none of us any good, frankly, unless we can figure out how to commercialize that technology, that science. And so that's one of the things that we have to really learn and focus on. One of those pillars is, how do we build bridges to those sources of innovation? Perhaps the most important thing is the leadership pillar. I'm a believer that nothing happens unless it happens in the top, and that the leadership of a city, region, needs to not only understand that innovation can drive economic development, but it's got to be central to their being. It's got to be central to their strategy. And so we work a lot with cities and regions and states in talking about how to do that. And the next pillar is really the pillar of talent. What works today, the kinds of people and skills we need today and going forward are fundamentally different than what I grew up with and what my parents grew up with. And so we have to understand how to connect that talent to those people who use the talent and kind of at least reduce the talent gap. And finally, I don't know, maybe secondly most important, okay? Leadership is very important, okay? Is in mobilizing the stakeholders of a region. It does us no good to sit here and say, okay, we've got these 7 pillars, let's go, we're going to do that, unless we get everybody within the community to support it. You know, somebody once said, you go fast, go alone, go long, bring everybody with you. And that's really absolutely critical. And the message that turned LACI around, that allowed us to grow big, was very simple. It was a message that was apparent, that was appropriate for everyone. The power of innovation to drive economic development. That is a benefit for everyone. And over the years, we've seen research that shows that every dollar invested in creating a new innovation company, a new innovation job, okay, will return $5 in response, 1 to 5 ratio. Now, if you're a leader of a city and you focus your investment on creating new businesses that are not innovation, great, got to have it. But those ratios are 1 to 1, not 1 to 5. So it is an incredibly important benefit to the city. That's the message that enabled us to mobilize a large part of the city of Los Angeles.
Very good. Thank you so much. Mr. Deputy Mayor. Hello from California.
G'day, Tom. How you going, mate?
Well, thank you. Logan is a fast-growing city. You've got 10,000 new people moving in every year, and this is a young, diverse population. You're a city leader that understands the power of entrepreneurship, which is fabulous. You know from firsthand experience that small businesses create wealth while creating employment for their residents. Your vision is to harness the energy and culture, both very important, that is unique to the community and create a city of opportunity. So how would you describe the state of the elements today for an innovation economy that are underway in Logan?
Thanks, Tom. Great question. And Fred sort of started speaking to it already when we spoke about leadership, and it was mentioned in the previous session too about the license to operate. So Logan is the youngest city in Queensland. 30% of our population is under the age of 18, but they are 100% of our future, and they demand more from government. They're not just copping roads, rates and rubbish. They want us to do more, and we're listening to them. And we see innovation as a pathway for them to have a prosperous future where we create high-value jobs. You need your entry-level jobs. You need things like baristas. You need people waiting tables. But what we really want are those 5X jobs that create more and more wealth in our community that we can lock in. And we're pursuing that innovation agenda because our community expects us to. So if we stop, I'll probably lose my job. So leadership's a double-edged sword. It's good to have leadership, but if you set a standard and get people to go on the journey with you, like you said, if you want to go first, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. The community is coming with us, but now they're pushing us. They're saying, well, why aren't we there yet? What do we need to get there? And Logan can be a nation-leading innovation ecosystem, but like so many things in this space, like everything in business, you cannot do it alone. Now, that's why collaboration with the state and federal governments is critical, but let's be honest, government isn't known for being innovative, which is why our partnerships with NGIN and with Go On are so important if we're going to deliver on that promise to our community that innovation is the key to a great future. And with the Olympics coming in the next 10 years, there's a sense of urgency about it, because if you start in 10 years, it's too late. You've really got to start now to get things moving. So there's really a few key messages I'd love for you to take away and just gloat about Logan to the rest of the world whenever you get a chance. And one of the major ones is that innovation doesn't actually belong in capital cities. So right now we're in a place called Brisbane. I don't actually call it by its name. I call it north of Logan, because CBDs are completely out of date. So in a post-COVID world where work from anywhere exists, I sat in traffic for 45 minutes today, Normally I sit in traffic for about 30 seconds as I walk from my kitchen to my office. And then I can start working immediately. I'm productive, I'm switched on, and I'm connected to my community. And so a CBD we have to physically move into a city in traffic just doesn't work anymore. And that's why regional innovation economies are so much better, because people who live close to home have more time, have more energy, and people are where innovation happens. It does not happen in traffic, I can tell you that much. And one of the main things that regional cities need in order to be able to establish themselves as innovation ecosystems is identity. And in Logan, that's one that connects authentically to the energy of a young city. We're full of mavericks, innovators, we're culturally diverse, and we've got a healthy dose of parochial pride, which means why would I want to leave city limits to go to work? I want my community to be proud to work in the city they live in, to keep that money local, to invest in small local businesses. And the second one is that while it's great to be an island where everyone wants to come to Logan and live there, you've got to be connected to national and international markets. But you can't do that without an identity. So it really is a double-edged sword. But I guess the key idea that I want to give you is that Logan is getting stuff done. So it's great to talk about things and it's great to have ideas, but we've already got the innovation coLab. We're teaching our young people in high school to be entrepreneurs. That's a program that's run through council, delivered in high schools, and really puts that mindset into the youth, which is why they expect us to do more. Because when they graduate, they tell us, you taught me how to be an entrepreneur. Where are the opportunities? Where's the capital? Where's the investment from government? And of course, to do that, we need digital connectivity. So in Logan, if you're lucky, you get mobile reception in about 2/3 of the city. How ridiculous is that? In 2021, you could have a flood, you could have an emergency, you can't call for help, you don't know what's going on, you don't know help's on the way, because the NBN and the mobile network that supports it is 2 weeks. So council, first one in Australia to do our own digital connectivity and infrastructure business case, because we need to build some stuff in order to have the connectivity so that we can work from home, so I never need to go north of Logan ever again. And importantly, none of this can be done in a public sector vacuum. So government can't do it on its own. We actually need business. We need private capital and investment to help us achieve that. We need the ideas and the energy that comes from the private sector. And we just provide the framework and the leadership that lets us get there.
I'm inspired. Thank you.
Me too. Job done. Hit my
So
KPI today. See you later.
Since our topic is innovation to accelerate economic growth specifically, I'd like to focus these next 3 questions around jobs for each one of you, and then we can open it up to questions from the audience, both live and virtual. Kevin, on the topic of jobs, you were talking about non-traditional centers of innovation. Can you give us a bit of a sense of how non-traditional centers of innovation are responsible for creating jobs in those areas? So one sort of little case study example would be terrific.
The Utah Valley. For those of you who are not familiar with the United States geography, Utah is a state that is located in the Rocky Mountains. It's a mountainous area. It's not near where any traditional clusters, not near any major centers of what we call classic innovation. We don't think of the companies there. We don't think of any of those elements. It's only it's only a couple million people total in the state. It's not that large. It's by plane, it's at least an hour flight from either Los Angeles or San Francisco. And yet what they did is that they created a series of partnerships and built up an innovation ecosystem in an amazing way. And we do a report called our Best Performing Cities Index, which talks about the cities that have been the fastest growing, the most adding both regular and tech jobs in the United States. And Provo, Utah, which is a college town, has a private school called Brigham Young University, but is also right near the University of Utah, has actually been #1 this last year. It's been in our top 5, top 10 on a regular basis. Salt Lake City, which is the capital, has also made the top of the list, as well as some other smaller cities. And if you want to look about in comparison to, if you for Logan is saying, is that as in not a capital, it's important because you have the combination of universities. You have leadership coming at the local level, leadership coming at the state level. You have people, both innovative researchers and professors. You have people who come in. People are moving into Utah at an amazing rate. As a matter of fact, they're having problems with housing affordability over the last year because so many people are moving in there looking for jobs, life sciences, technology, in a number of different fields where they've figured out their specific areas and they're owning them. And they've also created funding. The state of Utah created a fund of funds to actually match funding and encouraging various capital investors from outside the state to come invest in the state, to match funding, to guarantee the funding in some cases in these companies, in these places. And that combination of the leadership and others has produced incredible results, not just in jobs, but we also do an index called our State Technology and Science Index, which measures a number of different categories of innovation. And Utah has done incredibly well in that. And it's gotten to the point where it's a story in the United States, but in the rest of the world, not as much so. And it's a sign that a state and communities outside of the core, outside of the capital, can actually grow and thrive and create these partnerships and these centers for innovation, and that these can do incredibly well.
Great short case study. Thank you. I appreciate that. Fred, you talked about the 1-to-5 ratio. When you talk about a 5X economy, growing innovation businesses in order to create 5 jobs for every high-paying, family-supporting job that an innovation business creates. Can you describe how that innovation economy works and why an innovation company creates a 1-to-5 job ratio?
Why don't you ask me an easy question? How does a 5X economy work? Okay, so here's, for those of you, when you create a job, that's called a direct job. So I get hired. What do? I go out to the restaurant, I eat, I may go to the retail store, buy something. Those people that help me, those are indirect jobs. So the more direct jobs you create, the more indirect jobs that are. The question is, well, are all jobs equal? And we have found that they are not. So when you create an innovation company in your area, okay, what happens is they work with local retail, local strategic partners, accountants, marketing companies, consultants, those business suppliers that are locally, because this is a local company, not a regional office or regional store of something else. So there's that first layer of consulting or business services. Those folks and those original folks, well, they have lifestyle needs, right? They have the restaurants, healthcare, nurseries, all of those things, okay? And those folks, all of this now, okay, they generate taxes, okay? And those taxes then go to funnel the buying of services for those other people who are not directly impacted. So it's kind of a flow from innovation to everyone. And the reason that it's more effective as if you create an innovation job is because those jobs tend to be better paying, longer lasting, have a more impact within a community. All net new jobs in the United States in the last 40 years, all of them, were created by companies less than 5 years old. So if you're sitting and you're thinking about, well, how do I build the economy for my community? That's what you end up really focusing on. How do you do that? And it's not just, people say, well, isn't that, about money? Well, yeah, but it really impacts quality of life, because if you don't have a job, you can't have a high quality of life if you can't send your kids to school. And so it kind of waters through the whole area. So that's why creating innovation jobs really has a much greater impact on a community than other important jobs, but ones that are less impact for the entire community.
Brilliant, thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Deputy Mayor, you are involved, among other things, with the creation of jobs in Logan, and you and your team, with whom we've had the pleasure of working for the last couple of years now, are actively in the process of doing that. When you talk about Logan and then just north of Logan, right? Interested to hear how you're involved overall, in whichever way you'd like to talk about it, with creating jobs, but also from the perspective of working not just within Logan, but working, north of Logan, working Queensland wide, and even working nationally. Can you tell us give us some insight into some of the sorts of initiatives you're involved with that may be fostering job creation?
Thanks, Tom. So there's so much when it comes to creating jobs, and creating high value jobs is really what's the most important thing that we can possibly do. And we heard earlier about talent acquisition. I prefer to think of it as talent farming, because we have a young community. We have teenagers right now that if you skill them up to think differently, they will be the high-paid employees of the future. Now, it's probably too late for a has-been like me to become a high-paid employee of the future, but the future is our young people right now and the people who haven't been born yet. So we have a number of programs that we run. We've got the coLab, which is designed to support and encourage local businesses that have a big, hairy, ambitious goal and connect them into national and international markets to benefit not just Logan, although that is my first priority, but also the state and the country. We've then got Catapult, which I mentioned earlier, which goes into high schools, identifies kids that want to do something different, who don't want to be and as a small business owner, I call everyone who collects a wage from a company a wage slave, because you're not creating wealth, you're working for someone who's creating wealth. I want to create more wealth generators. I want to see young people who don't think about where am I going to get my job. They can think about how many of their friends are they going to create jobs for, how many of their community. And because we have a huge culturally diverse community, often people who come to Australia face challenges with just getting that first job, getting that first opportunity, because they don't have local experience. So what do? They go out, they start a business, and they create their own job. Then they create jobs for their extended family, their friends. The next thing you know, they're employing people. And that first 2 generations of new immigrants and the energy that they bring, the motivation they've got to set down roots, is the energy that we want to harness, not just in Logan, but all over Queensland and Australia. Though obviously Logan does it best, because we've got the most cultures per square metre anywhere in the world, even more than New York, mate. There we go. And the other thing I really want to focus on, which often gets forgotten, is that at the moment we're getting lots of investment, Logan, in transport and logistics. That sounds great. You get really big numbers, $30, $40 million investments, but those have really, really high square metre per job rate. So you might have a massive warehouse, but each job requires 500 or 600 square metres, and there's a limit for land. Innovation jobs, high paid tech jobs are more likely to have 50 square metres per employee, which means that within the employment land that you've got in a city, you get so much more wealth and so much more economic activity that then cascades throughout the entire economy.
Terrific answer. Thank you very much. Aaron, let me turn it over to you. I think we've given you a kind of a landscape of what's happening in the economic growth acceleration world as it relates to innovation. What questions might we have from the audience for our panelists?
Excellent. Thanks, Tom. We've got our first question here, and I think it's a bit to do with what's gone on with COVID and the constraints on migration, but also these problems were yawning before COVID as well, in terms of filling skills gaps. The question from Ralph Walker is there a disconnect between industry talking about the labour shortage challenges and government using job creation as the measures of success?
Kevin wants it. And he's got to shout me a beer because he's speaking with his microphone
between the
muted.
job listings. There's an opportunity gap issue, which is a lot of times the positions. So I'll try this one more.
think so.
Where with the positions that are listed, often because
Just having a lot of trouble with sound here, unfortunately.
I can take a chop at it. So we actually have something called the Mayor's Employment Task Force in Logan, because we heard from the business community, we can't find employees. We're willing to train them up. We're willing to get them professional development on the job, but we'll put out an ad. We'll get 30 people apply, 28 of them be no-shows, and the 2 people who show up are just showing up so that they're ticking a box for Centrelink so that they can collect an unemployment benefit. And so what business said to council when we said, what can we do to help? They said, find us some people who actually want jobs. Like, there's a skills shortage. We're happy to close that gap by giving them on-the-job experience and training them up. But we want people with the soft skills who show up to work on time, are motivated to work, and want to learn. And it's an amazing and simple idea that you can take people who want jobs and connect them to people who have jobs, and that's innovation, because it's not getting done at the moment in Australia by the way that our employment services networks are focused, because their KPIs are all about generating people applying for jobs rather than people getting jobs and then developing those jobs into highly paid jobs. So it was actually the mayor's brainchild, where he said, why don't we just employ somebody who just connects business to people that want to work? It sounds simple, but it's working very well. And that means that there's, again, local people working in high paid jobs. We found out that the best restaurant in Logan had one of the best chefs in Australia living just 15 minutes up the road, but SEEK couldn't find that, but council could. And that's what we're trying to do, is just make those easy connections that solves problem for business in a simple way.
Tom, we might try and go back to Kevin again. We hope we've fixed the sound issues, Kevin, so please go ahead again.
can you hear me at all?
Perfectly.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, thank you. All right, so the key thing I was trying to say is that there are 2 issues going on, and I think that some of it was already just touched on, but one is that governments tend to often look at a metric of just jobs created, not the salaries, not the sustainability of those jobs. And it's very important to look at not just that jobs are being created, but the kinds of jobs that are being created. And that's incredibly significant. And when people want to live and work and sustain an area, they want to know they can have a real living. A lot of low cost jobs were created and the recovery in a number of different parts of the world. And the other is, and this is very important when it comes to filling those jobs, is that you need to be able to address what is an opportunity gap. Having those mechanisms like in Logan, where you match the skills that people actually have with the employers. The employers need to have confidence that they can find the people with the skills they need, and the people with the skills need to have confidence that if they move to an area, that they will be able to get that kind of job they're looking for. And if you can match those, then it makes a huge difference.
Excellent. Thanks for persevering, Kevin, with our sound issues. Tom, we've got another question from the floor here.
Hi, not so much a question, but a congratulations to John. As a deputy mayor at Logan, I come from the Gold Coast, which is the Florida of Australia, which is a couple of minutes south. So I too have to drive through to Brisbane. But on a question of leadership, what they're doing in Logan is absolutely magnificent. And we're sort of a southeast region of Queensland, but most are just referred to as and our state government are referred to as southeast Queensland. So for everyone concerned, we're just part of Brisbane, but we're not. But our council down in the Gold Coast Council is the most recalcitrant council in Australia in relation to climate change or the sort of leadership issues that I congratulate Logan on doing. Now I have stood as a candidate for mayor many times down on the Gold Coast, and I'm working currently on innovation technologies, of which I'll now introduce later to Logan Council, because that's the only place where we get an answer, because that cooperation that you've suggested between making networks just doesn't seem to happen in Australia. And I don't know whether it's got to do with the concentrations of population or whether it's the political makeup of Australia, but there are certainly problems that we've got to get over that maybe you haven't quite had over there in a much more entrepreneurial type of economy.
Tom, that was a comment there, but I'm just wondering if any of the panellists would like to comment on the comment. And I think we actually, I thought that the Gold Coast was more the Vegas of Australia, but we can talk about that a little bit later. So Tom, if you'd like to throw that to any of your panel.
Fred, you've got experience, you know, with LACI and other cities that you've worked with in NGIN, that we've worked with in NGIN. What's your view on that question, the importance of, let's say, the political makeup of a council, for example, in enabling innovation, not only in enabling innovation to happen, but to enable an innovation economy to be built?
Well, you need to close your ears, Jonathan. You know, what we believe is that innovation can come from cities of all sizes. You know, historically, people thought it was Silicon Valley or Boston or wherever. Okay, and those innovations would be ported to the rest of the world and so forth. Well, we believe that innovation not only can be, but must be created by smaller cities. And if you do that, okay, you will over time gain a reputation and a brand for being innovative, and you will attract attention and interest, you know, and as this gentleman just said. And so I think it's exactly the kind of proof point that we believe is true. In terms of the gentleman's point about connectivity, now having said all of that wonderful things about Logan, I don't think Logan can compete by themselves. They have to connect to the rest of the region, and also obviously what we're doing is connecting to the rest of the world, because no one city, or no one city less the size of LA or whatever, can have all of those 7 pillars. Okay? But they need access to all of those 7 pillars, and that's what connectivity does. And that means that we all share best practices, we all share opportunities, we all reduce the costs of delivering benefits to our entrepreneurs. But we do it in a network way. And so rather than competing with each community for retail space or whatever, we compete with the world for innovation.
Tom, we're at time, so I might throw to you just to close out the panel. It's been a fantastic session.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I just want to thank our panelists who I thought did a fabulous job. Kevin, Fred, and Deputy Mayor Jon, thank you so much for the prep and the delivery today. Fantastic event. Thank you so much. And thanks also to all of the conference organizers who made this a seamless experience. Thank you.
Let's give Tom White and our panel a big round of applause, folks. No easy task hosting virtually, I can assure you. So Tom's done a wonderful job in bringing out what is a really important discussion, and that power of clusters, innovation districts, and perhaps some of the secrets to making those work, because we've seen some good ones. We've also seen some ones which don't work out so well, where they're missing some of those platforms, and well done to Logan City Council too on really grabbing the edge on this as well. So excellent panel again.